go ahead and get started. Got it. Recording started. So we'll go ahead and get started. We have everyone here, I think, is on Zoom. So whatever you guys are doing, if you wouldn't mind, turn on your camera. I'd appreciate it. It'll help me out a little bit just from an energy standpoint. And also, if you're eating, it's fine. If you're doing anything, well, not everything, but in any case, if it's appropriate, turn your camera on. If not, that'll be okay too. Looks like we have another person in the waiting room here. So people are still coming in. So first thing I want to do today is talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about. So the class is 0 to 20 closings per year. And this is a class that I completely made up with the help of a bunch of, sorry, I'm going to keep adding people in here. Give me one more second. I think we got everybody in. Apologize, there's a bunch of things in the waiting room. So, okay, so the class again, 0 to 20 closings per year. And so most of the people here, I'm assuming, are not yet at 20 listings per year. Is that pretty accurate?
Yes.
You guys are working on getting to 20, or is there anybody here that's of 20 or above?
I mean, are you talking listings or just transactions?
Transactions. That's how just
I think I did 28 last year.
28 last year. Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's great. 28 transactions is amazing.
Well, I mean, my background's new construction, so it's not like I'm a newbie completely. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Can anybody tell if there's somebody waiting to get in? I think maybe that's not what that is. All right. Well, we're just going to just start it. And if there's anybody I'm missing that's not in the call then or in the Zoom meeting, I apologize. But we'll go ahead and go for it. So a little bit about me. I am Ryan Reynolds, obviously, and then Kate Randall's the only one that's here physically. So she just came in the room. So this is going to be kind of interesting how this works out. But in any case, another person in the waiting room. I'm the owner of the Ryan Reynolds team here at Keller Williams Consultants Realty in Dublin. Okay, now we have people coming in the room, so this is going to be a little harder. I was just going to do it on Zoom, and now we've got everybody here. So as usual, agents are in person on Monday. Sorry, I'm a little bit stumbling here. I'm trying to figure out what technology I'm supposed to be using. So there's another one. We're going to wait one more minute before we start, actually.
You should be good, Ryan.
Okay, there's people here too that are coming in, so that's why I was. Are you?
Yeah, it should automatically change on the TV. We can see you on Zoom, and I can see you from the training room. So I think you're good.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and start. So again, my name is Ryan Reynolds. I'm the owner of the Ryan Reynolds team here at Keller Williams Consultants Realty, and our team last year sold right under 120 transactions, 120, maybe it was 119, something like that. And that puts us in the top 0.5% of all the agents in the greater Columbus area. My major roles in life are that I'm a husband to my wife, Kim, and then dad to the 3 boys, Joe, Nathan, and Sam. And I am an Eagle Scout going back and a Scoutmaster, actually currently an assistant Scoutmaster. I was the head dude, but then luckily I've been able to step down here recently. So this presentation I'm going to use, I'm taking Gary Keller's analogy from the MREA book of climbing a mountain, and we're gonna talk about how it parallels to getting to 20 transactions. So we're going to start right there, and you can see that that's a picture of me actually on top of one of the mountains that we climbed this past summer. I took a group of scouts to northern New Mexico, and we went on a 14-day backpacking trip in the backcountry. And so we didn't, come out of the backwoods for like 12 days, which was, with a bunch of 17, 18-year-old boys, you can imagine the odor was amazing. So if you ever have any of the kids at home, you probably know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so that's kind of what we're going to do. So this is the first time I've given this presentation, so we'll see how it goes. And as we're going through, please feel free to stop me. Feel free to say, man, you're way off track. This is not how things are. And correct me if you need to. So today's goals. So we're going to use the MREA's mountain climbing analogy, and then we're going to go through the foundational systems of the MREA book, as well as the 4 models and how to apply them to building a business from 0 to 20. We're also going to lay out a clear plan for agents who are working toward getting 20 transactions per year, and all of these ideas were taken out of essentially 2 classes, except for the stuff that I inputted myself. The one class is the MREA Business Planning Clinic. So that usually comes around in the fall. And so if any of you are around still in the fall, like if you made it that far in the year, please come to that class, because I'm not probably teaching it, but the instructors that come in are usually regional instructors, and they're amazing. The other class is called the 24 Topics of the MREA. And so the concepts for this presentation were pretty much all from those. And so I want to make sure I give credit to where credit's due. One of the biggest things in the MREA book is that, actually, let me see, I'm going to try and see if I can see people here again. Who all has read, by a show of, oops, sorry, trying to get to the thing so I can see it, see the people again. But who all has read the MREA book? You read it? Okay, what was your name again?
Michelle.
Michelle. Oh, Michelle. Okay, oh, perfect. Yeah, you're the one who's talked about on Facebook. You're my one fan, you and Dana. So who else has read the MREA book? Anyone here in class or in the Zoom call? Okay, so I'm going to take that most of you have not read the book. And so we're going to talk heavily about the book, and I'm going to reference it from time to time. So down the right-hand corner of this slide, you're going to see, I'm going to kind of walk around. So actually, I probably can't do that, so nobody will see me here. One of the things you should definitely do, if you haven't done already, is read the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. A lot of times they call it the Red Book, and it is, in my opinion, the Bible of how to build a real estate business. Whether you want to build that business, and it's a little bit deceptive because it does say Millionaire Real Estate Agent. However, it teaches you to build a business, whether you want to do 10 transactions a year, 50 transactions a year, or 100 or 10,000 transactions a year. The same concepts and models apply to everything from a real estate perspective and building those teams. Gary Keller in the book says you need to realize people have lived before. Unmute myself. I don't want to do that. You guys can still hear me, I take it. I just got a warning on my screen that said to unmute me. So you guys can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because it's coming through a different mic. So you need to realize people have lived before you, and you might be wise to slow down for just a second and figure out what they learned on their journey before you start your own. And so Gary was telling this story in the book, and he's talking about basically when he was graduating, he was in actual business school, and he was talking to one of his professors, and he was essentially telling the professor, hey, I already know everything, so you don't really need to tell me how to do this deal. And this was the thing that he said to him. And he said it was one of the transformational points in his life, because at that point he realized that he didn't have to create everything. And so if you're coming into real estate with the perspective that you have to figure this all out, the one thing I'm going to tell you is going to save you a ton of time is it's all in the book. So you just need to make sure you read the book. In the MREA book, which MREA obviously stands for Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, there's 4 models. And Gary advocates, actually the interesting thing in the book, maybe backing up one second, is that the first probably third of the book doesn't have anything to do with real estate. It talks specifically about mindset. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here coming up, and about how to think and those kind of things. So just maybe pay specific attention to that part if you end up reading the book, which I say I highly encourage. Inside the book, there are 4 models that you need to be aware of. The 2 most impactful ones beginning are going to be your economic model and your lead generation model. And those essentially will lay out the roadmap for where you need to go. As you build your business, the budget model becomes more important, and then the organizational model also becomes into play a little bit more. Although the organizational model is something that we can talk about now and how it applies to building a business up to 20 transactions. And the biggest thing I think that you need to take away from the book is that if you start with the models and add creativity on top of those models, you're going to be in a much more stable place than if you start with creativity. And you can see by the triangles here, or the pyramids, which could really just be triangles. It's hard to say, actually. It's not 3D. But in any case, the creativity on the bottom, if you start with the creativity, you're going to be all over the place, and you're potentially not going to be building a stable business that can be scalable. One of the things that, as you're going from 0 to 20, you have to keep in mind is that if you intend to build a bigger business, the things you do from 0 to 20 lay the foundation for the things you're going to be doing when you're selling 120 or 220 houses. So if you don't want to have to redo all of that stuff, it's probably best to start with the model in the beginning, the correct model in the beginning. Michelle, where are you at with yours, with your business? How many transactions would you say you've sold in the last year? Michelle's in class here, by the way. 2? Okay, so you're still building things up. Okay, sounds really good. And then I think we had one person on here that sold a little bit more than 20, but had come out of the new home sales business. So I got to try and find those people again because it's difficult. So Emily, what was it? So obviously you went in your first year, you said you sold 28 transactions. I'm assuming you brought over models and systems that you used to use in the new home sales arena?
Yeah, I think that it was helpful that I have a lot of construction background, and my niche is really between 100 and 300,000, which is a difficult niche, but with my knowing about construction, that's probably helped me to gain their trust, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of lead gen. It's this whole thing is, in my opinion, is lead gen, but that's just me. I deal a lot with buyers.
That's my punchline. You can't.
Sorry.
That's my punchline. You can't tell everybody that late this early. I'm just teasing. But in any case, yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely a lot about lead gen. So I'm assuming you brought models over, and that's how you were able to move so quickly. And this presentation may last 20 minutes, by the way, or it may last an hour and 20 minutes. I'm not really sure how long it's going to go. A couple other foundational ideas inside the MREA. You guys have probably all seen, and this is the updated version of it. Have you ever seen this triangle here that's got, you guys can see my cursor? Yep. There's this triangle that's got think, earn, net, receive, and give. And in the past, it was think, earn, net, and receive. And then for MREA 2, the second version of the book, which has been promised to us for at least 5 years now, but Gary keeps getting busier and busier, it sounds like. The give is on the top. So and when he's talking about think, earn, net, receive, give, in the book, he was referring to $1 million. So think $1 million first, earn $1 million, net, receive, and then be able to give $1 million. And so again, that thinking is the bottom foundational piece. You're also then surrounded on the three sides by the leads on the bottom, which obviously you just pointed out are the foundational piece of everything. And then the leverage and the listings being the most leverageable piece of that. And then surrounding all of that is the value proposition, your database, and the service plan. And so we're not going to really go into this specific thing too much, but I just wanted to point out that this is one of the key concepts in the book, and it's a foundational idea. The other foundational idea on here is the breaking through to a higher achievement. And so a lot of you are going to be able to do a lot with just natural ability. I know some people that have a crazy amount of natural ability, and they can do a ton. And then they get to this natural ceiling of achievement, or achievement ceiling, they call it here. And they get to this point and they can never sell more than 30 or 40 or 50 houses or whatever it is by themselves. And the reason they're not able to do that is because they haven't built that foundation based on scalable models to get them through that ceiling of a natural ability to the next level. And so typically what happens is somebody gets to that point, realizes that, oh, I'm not as smart as I thought I was, and then goes back and puts in those foundational models, and that enables them to break through the next level. And that continues to happen until they hit the next ceiling of achievement. And so the bigger your models are, the bigger your ceiling will end up being. And I can't see you guys all the time because I'm trying to look at the screen at the same time. So if you need to stop me, feel free to do that. And I can't see you at the same time as I see the screen, which is a unique problem to have. So those are the two big things that in the beginning of the book I wanted to make sure I pointed out. So now we get to the stuff I really want to talk about, because those were kind of base sort of things. So within hiking, in the Big Gary's analogy, as well as the trip I took this past summer with the Boy Scouts, there's a lot of parallels. And so I wanted to kind of discuss all of those, or not all of them, a lot of them anyways. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase this and start with base camp being where you guys are now, potentially in your business. Either maybe you're at 0, maybe you're at 28, but either way, I'm going to call that base camp. And then where you want to get to is being kind of the top of the mountain. So the parallels that I can see in hiking real estate. In fact, I started out making this slide and I had 2 separate slides, and I was like, oh, how am I going to draw these parallels? But then at the end of the day, I realized that they're exactly the same, in that your mindset is the very foundation of things. When Gary talks about thinking $1 million or thinking 20 transactions, however you want to think about it, that's the basis of all of it. There's going to be preparation involved with both things. And when we went to the hiking, it's called Philmont, actually is the name of the camp we went to, but it's like 15,000 miles or something. I don't know, it's a huge reservation in northern New Mexico. But before I went there, we had to think about getting there. And before we went there, obviously we talked to a lot of people, and you may be in this phase in your business now where you're talking to a lot of people about how do you do stuff. You might be reading books about it. You might be looking at maps and being on Facebook groups and doing the research in that perspective to kind of understand about what that real estate is going to look like for you to get to 20 transactions. And then after you've thought about it for a long enough time and you decide to go ahead and do something, there you go into the sort of the next phase that's very parallel in hiking and real estate, and that's preparation. So from a hiking standpoint, the preparation involved a bunch of different things. It involved me spending a tremendous amount of money on extremely light things that I could carry up and down these mountains, and ridiculous amount of money actually. But then you start getting into the research of all that stuff. So you're getting the equipment, you're getting the tools and things like that. And in real estate, you kind of go through the same phase, or you may go through the same phase where you're researching, okay, what kind of lead generation or CRM should I be using? What kind of signs should I be using? What should my logo look like? What should I wear? What kind of car should I drive? All the different things, the equipment that might be necessary for you to do real estate. Another thing that becomes parallel between these two things is planning. And so when we went to this trip, obviously we had to plan our route. It was we did 77 miles, I think it was, or 78 miles in 2 weeks. And so that required us to go from place to place. And I don't know if you know this or not, but in New Mexico, there's not very much water. So when you would go somewhere, you'd have to make sure that you had a water source, and frequently it would be a stream or a pond, and then sometimes they had these big water things for us that we could take and purify. But in any case, we had to plan our route, and we had to be cognizant of the things we were going to need along the way, like water and being able to pick up food and things like that, because there were some places to do that. So we had to plan quite a few things. And then in real estate, obviously you need to plan, because if you don't plan, then you're kind of like the rabbit says in the, this is where I'm going off script. It's going to be terrible. I feel like Joe Biden up here. But when you go off script, it's not good. But if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which way you go, is essentially the moral of that story. And so if you're planning real estate and you're not certain about where you're planning to get to, you're probably not going to get anywhere more than whatever your natural ability will allow you to do and what your just normal sales ability might make sense in doing. And then the last thing is systems. And so in hiking, you have a lot of systems. You wouldn't really think about this, but you have a sleep system. So like what kind of a sleeping bag sits on what type of a air mattress, and what kind of air pillow or whatever it is that you're carrying. That sleep system is one thing. Your cooking system. So you may have an ultralight stove. You could go with a kind that you have a bottle of propane type stuff you screw in, or you could go with one that uses white gas. And because we were elevation, we wanted to use one that went with white gas and different things like that. You have your backpack system. So your backpack being pretty important, because it's got to be able to transfer the weight of all of the things you're taking with you onto your hips and down eventually into your legs. Oh, and by the way, in preparation, there was a lot of exercise that had to be had before I went with chasing 19-year-olds up and down a mountain. But going back to the system, so your footwear system, how many pairs of socks, what kind of socks, what materials should they be, all of the different clothing and everything else you wear. So in real estate, it's sort of the same thing. And the systems here, I think, primarily refer to things like your lead generation system, your showing houses system, your system for writing offers. You should have a system for that. You should have a system for contract to close. You should have a system for working in all these different things. And so thinking about all that kind of stuff are things you probably need to start thinking about doing before you ever leave base camp. And now I want to go jumping back into some of that thinking. So one of the other big things that Gary talks about, or one of the first things, like I said, dedicated really the first third of his book, is your mindset. And so thinking powered by a big why. So with the scout troop and going on these hikes, the biggest thing we had to figure out is, what do we want to do? What are our plans? What are we trying to accomplish? And so the big goals for us were to climb a mountain called Baldy, which is about 12,000, a little over 12,000 feet. And so it's not a huge mountain. If Everest is like, I don't know, 20,000 feet or something. It's really high, but it's high enough where you get up there and you have a hard time breathing. And so for the kids, their big why is adventure a lot of times, and their big why is, I want to do stuff and say I did things and have that accomplishment behind them. But when you think about big goals like that, again, that's where the big models kick in for the kids. Like, okay, how are you going to get there? Like, when you're talking to the younger scouts, or the not really younger, they're teenagers, you know, their brains are not at a point where they can understand that if in order to get to Denver, to drive to this place that's in northern New Mexico, I got to figure out how to get plane tickets. In order to get plane tickets, I got to figure out how to generate money in order for us to buy those things. And so similarly, if you have a big goal, whether it's to get to 20 or to get to 200, if you set it big enough, it'll pull you through all of the smaller obstacles. So their big goal was to get here and have this experience. And all those smaller obstacles were getting the tickets, getting the things that they needed. And real estate it's very similar. So if you set a goal to do 20 and you come up a little bit short, maybe that's okay with you, maybe it's not, but maybe you ought to think about setting a bigger goal and making that goal 40 or making it 50, because the thinking that you have to do to go to 40 or 50 transactions will pull you into that 20 much more easily. Does that make sense at all? I guess you guys can sort of see me there, but pulling you through that 20 is something that would happen if you set a bigger goal. So maybe I encourage you to think about how big your goals are and what you can do. So let's talk a little bit about preparation. And you guys click say stop me if you have questions or if you need anything. So we're going to talk about three or four things. So one of the things that doesn't have anything to do with hiking is business 101, but I think it's something we need to talk about. We'll talk about gear that you might need along the way. We'll talk about some supplies and the training and that kind of stuff. And this all falls into the category of preparation. In this picture here, you can see the boys were desperately trying to grab all of the things we were going to need. Those are food packs that the one kid, that's actually my son, is holding. And then of course the toilet paper was the big thing. They had way too much of that. I don't know what they were thinking, but they brought a lot. So planning is the next thing. So when we think about planning, and we're going to go into these things more in depth, planning is really your economic model. So the things from the MREA book that we've talked about, the 4 models, the economic model, the lead generation model, the budget model, and the organizational model are your map. And we're going to jump right into talking about, actually, I'm going to back up. I think I must have either omitted a slide or something, but in any case, I want to go back to preparation. So business 101. So for all of you guys who are on the Zoom call, I'm going to open this thing back up. Who all, if you can somehow show me, who all has separate bank accounts for their business for real estate? You guys separate bank? Michelle has hers. You guys don't have separate bank accounts? Separate credit cards? No, not separate credit. Okay, you got separate, or debit cards maybe? You have a debit card. Okay, debit, credit card. So business 101, I would say first thing you have to realize when you're getting ready to do this journey of going from 0 to 20 is that you are actually now in business for yourself. The government looks at you as though you are somebody who is now operating a business, and so there's different requirements for you than there are as an employee. I don't know if Kate probably knows a little bit about that because she's just started a business in the last couple of years. The biggest thing is that you need to keep separate accounts. So if you don't yet have a separate bank account for your real estate activities, you need to go open one like today or yesterday would have been better. You should probably get a debit card or something, or credit card, to run all of your real estate expenses through that business, because when it comes to tax time, you're going to need to be able to bring an accounting, a full accounting of what your activities have been. And if you have those things going into your personal accounts, if you get audited by the IRS, they're going to go through every one of your personal accounts where that money may have touched. But if you have separate business accounts, you probably are going to save a lot of time by having it all correlated in one, or collated in one place. And so definitely recommend doing that. Obviously, you guys all have the proper licenses and stuff like that you need. One thing you might consider at some point is forming an LLC. That's probably the next level. We're not going to really talk about that too much unless somebody really wants to know more about that. But an LLC or some sort of a business entity that's separate from yourself might be something to consider. We talked a little bit about the gear. So in terms of real estate, the gear you're going to need, obviously, to go in 0 to 20 is pretty basic. You're going to need your cell phone. You're going to need business cards. You're going to need your car. You're going to need some supplies to write offers. You need a computer and those kind of things. Supplies. For me, when I was going from 0 to 20, I built my business doing door knocking originally. So if anybody specifically got questions about door knocking, feel free to ask. But I needed to have a lot of snacks in my car and a lot of water in my car because I was putting some miles on that thing and actually walking neighborhoods. And so that was something that was a pretty important thing. Training. So training is something that you never stop doing. However, I will tell you that if you want to get to 20 deals, you have to stop going to trainings all the time at some point and start doing some real estate. So there are several people that I know of, and a lot of people you guys might know, that they're like awesome at training classes. They go to trainings all the time. They know all this stuff, but they never apply it. And so they therefore never hit their goals. And so training is important, but the most important thing is just getting out there and starting down the path. From a hiking standpoint, you have to leave base camp at some point. Planning. All right, so we talked a little bit about the 4 models of the MREA, and we're going to jump into the economic model next, first maybe. And so this is actually where I really can lose people, but also this is where I think you got to know. So again, starting with the end in mind, if you are trying to get to 20, or your intention is to get to 20 transactions, you need to know, what does that mean? And so in the MREA book, and also in all the classes and everywhere online, you can find the economic model worksheet. And I'm going to flip to the next page because I believe it's got this filled out. So I've created an economic model here for 20 transactions, and it's pretty basic. You start with the end in mind. So you start with how much money you want to make. And in this case, 20 transactions is about $100,000 net per year. I don't know, does that sound what you guys had you thought about that before? Or, okay, perfect. So 20 transactions, we try to start with the net and we work backwards. And so the economic model worksheet has you put your net income up here at the beginning. And so if you're thinking, well, I just want to do 20, and I'll just end up wherever I want to end up, you can do that. That's great. But the problem is that it may not get you exactly where you're trying to get to. You'll just end up wherever you end up. So $100,000 net income would be your forecasted income for the first year. And then your cost of sale. So there's 2 big expenses that are going to come out of whatever number you have as your goal. One of them is cost of sale. And so for most solo agents, your only cost of sale is going to be your cap with Keller Williams. And it's also going to be your international fee with Keller Williams International, and then any referral fees you would pay to an outside agent. So like somebody sends you a referral for a buyer and you have to pay them 25% or whatever. So that 25% is called cost of sale. Inside the MREA model, they forecast a cost of sales around 29.2%, but at a lower number of production, that number is not 29.2%. It actually is much lower. And so I really just kind of worked backwards to try to figure out what a reasonable number would be. And so $25,000 would be kind of in the ballpark. And that works out to about 14% cost of sale. Now your operating expenses, no matter what level you're at, probably are going to run, or potentially could run, anywhere close to that 29.2%, which is what they forecast in the step 2, I guess, of here. And so what basically you do is you take your net income, what you want to make, add to that your cost of sales, which is that 14%, and then add to the operating expense 29.2% to get your gross income. So one thing I always like to point out is that I saw this today on a text I got from Jeff Glover. He texts me every morning. I don't know if you know Jeff Glover, but he's a pretty big deal. And he texts me and about 10 million other people every morning at the same time. But anyway, he said that a lot of agents who get into the business don't realize that when they ask about being on a team, they ask about what's my split going to be? Because that's usually the question as a team leader I get when people ask me. Where the kind of the more important question people should be asking if you're considering being on a team is, what is my net going to be? Like, how much money am I actually going to make? And the reason that that's interesting is because what Jeff had said, he had a conversation with an agent who asked him that same question. When his reply to that was, well, what's your split now? And the guy replied, well, I get 100% after I pay my $15,000 cap. And he must have been a Remax guy or something. Say, okay, well, do you pay taxes? And he said, yeah. And so, well, well, actually he said, what was your gross income last year? And the guy said, I had $240,000 as my gross income. And so I'm doing pretty good. And so then he said, well, do you pay taxes? And he said, yeah. And then Jeff asked him next, he said, well, what were your expenses and what did you report on your income taxes that you made last year? He said, well, I reported $120,000 because he had a cost of sale and he had operating expense. And so right away, the guy realized that his split was actually 50%. It wasn't that he was making 100%. He was actually making 50% because that's what he was incurring as part of his actual normal expenses. So anyway, so looking at these two expenses, if you're a team owner, one other thing it's kind of interesting to look at is that, okay, the number, let's just say you want to make 150,000 as a team owner later on, and you have these different cost of sale numbers. You can right away notice when this goes to 29.2 and you have agents on your team, that means that 60% of the income is going to, so you're going to other people or expenses. And so a team owner, their goal is to get to 40% the take home. In other words, their split is 40%. So anyway, just to kind of an aside on that. But going back to this, so basically what that means is that in order to net $100,000 by selling 20 transactions, you have to actually close $176,000 with a GCI, and that comes out at $300,000 per transaction. Approximately is 300 on buyers sellers, and 325 on listings, or on buyers, I should say. So maybe back that back up. So typically your listings are going to be less expensive than your buyers because your buyers are trading up. So your listings may be 300, and in this case I use that, and then your buyers you're working with are going to be 325. So the total sold volume would be 6.2 million. And then you can kind of ignore the adjusted sold volume because there are some assumptions you need to make about the percentage you get paid. And we'll do that in the next slide. So any questions on that and how that works out? So 20 transactions, 176,000 in GCI works out to around $100,000 net. Any questions on that?
What is GCI?
Oh, good question. Gross commission income. So the amount of money you make on a transaction would be your GCI. So if you sold a $100,000 house and you got paid 3,000 or 3%, then that $3,000 is the gross commission income you made. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thanks.
Definitely stop me if you guys don't understand something I said, because sometimes I take for granted some of these acronyms. My wife is always getting on me. Like, what, you need to like speak English is what she said a couple of times, because I was talking too much in those kind of acronyms. Anyway, okay, so that's the basics. So now let's look at this. So where does your business come from in this roadmap? Well, if you make the assumption that you want to have a healthy business and that 50% of your revenue will come from your sellers and 50% of your revenue will come from your buyers, then that's what we did here. And we'll lay out all these things, and we're going to work backwards. Basically, the goal of this economic model is to figure out what it is you have to do on a weekly basis in order to make things happen. So if 50% of the 176,000 is 88,339, and that's how much has to come from your sellers. And then I use 2.7% here because a lot of times on the listing side now, you're not quite getting a full 3%. And we won't probably talk about that too much. However, I'm sure people would argue with it. And that means at $300,000, you need to actually sell 10.9. So essentially 11 sales of listings. And then if 95% of the listings you sold, if 95% of the listings you took are sold, that means you have to have basically 12 listings that you took. And if 65% of the listings you went on appointments with, you actually got the listing, that means you have to go on 18 appointments per year, 17.7 appointments per year. And that works out to a little over 1 or 1.5 per month, or a half appointment a week. So essentially 2 appointments a month will get you, 2 listing appointments a month will get you the 10 or 11 solds. Does that make sense? Everybody follow that one, the math on that? Okay, so that's our roadmap for sellers. Now, similarly on the buy side, and to make this hard, of course, I decided to use different numbers. Still need 88,000 in GCI, which is this gross revenue the gross revenue from buyers. On the buy side, you probably do most of the time get a little bit closer to the 3%. So you have 2.9% commission there. And then that works out to about 3 million in buyer sold volume at $325,000 per transaction. That works out to about 9.4 or close to 10. So basically, at the end of the day, you need to get 21 sold, really, is what this plan will have you do. 11 sellers and 9.5 to 10 buyers. And then at the 75% conversion rate of buyers who are working with you that write an offer that get accepted eventually, it means you need to start writing offers for 12.5% of those, or for 12 or 13 basically buyers. So you need to actually be working with 13 buyers. And then at a 75% conversion rate of people who you meet with that decide to work with you, means you need to actually have 17 people that you've met with in a buyer appointment. So does that make sense? How to get to that? Okay, great. So now we know where we're going. We've got this map, and that also works out to 2 monthly buyer appointments. So at the end of the day, all we need to really know from all these calculations And all this information is that we need to get 2 buyer appointments and 2 listing appointments a month. And we're probably going to do better than 20 transactions a year. And that's it. So next, then the question is, where do you find these appointments? And I don't know how I do them on time. I didn't look and see, but and speed me up. It's 12:36. Okay, geez, I gotta go faster. Okay, so in the book on page 136, there are a bunch of different ways you can get business. You can go from, and these are somewhat dated, I'll be honest with you, but the idea is the same. There's prospecting and marketing efforts you can do. So you can either prospect, which is essentially where you're reaching out to buyers, or you can market, and which is or buyers or sellers, I mean, or you can market. And when you're marketing, what's happening is that buyers and sellers are coming to you. As a newer person in the business, potentially you're likely going to have to do more prospecting than marketing, because people won't necessarily, unless you have a lot of extra cash sitting around to start your business, marketing costs a lot of money typically. So you want to probably start with the prospecting and the cheaper stuff. So your main three key things you need to do in the lead generation model, and we'll go into see some of the, I think I actually brought the statistics too here, not the statistics, but brought the numbers, but you really want to do these activities, prospecting and marketing, and then you take the results of those and you put those people in a database, and you want to feed that database basically every day, and then you want to systematically market to that database through email and through telephone and things like that. So when we think about that lead generation model, so we have some decisions we have to make, and those decisions can be based on the amount of money you have and on the amount of time you have. So when you're marketing or prospecting, you can either do that to people you already know, which are considered METs. Have you guys heard that term before? People you've met before. So a person you know is called a MET. Or you can do that with people you haven't met. So each of those two things has a different ratio of conversion. So you're going to have better success with people who you already know, unless you aren't liked by the people you know, in which case you might want to go with the haven't mets. So Kate thinks that's funny for some reason. It's obvious, right? So it used to be thought in the past that your goal with people you knew would be 12. You would, for every 12 people that you had in your database that you consistently marketed to in an active way, you would get 2 transactions per year. So what that means is you can just use that as a ratio. So if you want to have 20 closed deals, and you know that for every 12 people you market to, you'll get 2 deals, you can do the math on that and figure out how many contacts is it that way you need to have in your database. Second option would be to do that through haven't mets only. And that ratio is closer to 1 in 50. So people you don't know, more likely are not going to do business with you because they don't know you. And so you have to talk to essentially 4 times as many people that you don't know in order to get the same number of people to actually talk with you or to work with you. And so that ratio is 1 in 50. Or you can do it through a combination of those 2 things. And each of these activities also has a conversion rate that, depending on what type of marketing you're doing to them. So there's really 2 ratios. There's the type of person you're marketing to, and then there's the ratio of the type of activity you're doing to market or prospect toward them. So probably getting too deep in the numbers there, I'm feeling like. But in any case, if we go back to this, so let's just say, for example, like, okay, I'm going to market to a neighborhood. So that neighborhood of people I don't know. And so let's say I want to get 3 deals out of that neighborhood. That means that if I'm trying to get 3 deals out of there and I don't know those people, the ratio is 1 in 50. So that would mean I'd have to successfully market to 150 people consistently in order to get 3 people to work with me in a given year. So the great thing about marketing is that it is scalable. So easily you can call, or you can instead of marketing to 150, you can market to 1,050 and get 30 deals out of it. Now it costs more money, but that's one thing that's great about marketing, is that you don't have to do anything necessarily different. Prospecting, on the other hand, for instance, for sale by owners, and you're probably not going to know any people that are for sale by owners. And so you may have a ratio here where you're calling 10 for sale by owners to get one really lead that will talk to you or have an appointment. And of those leads you get, then that turns into maybe 1 every 5 or something like that you actually get the listing for. So that would mean you have to, for every 50 for sale by owners you'd go to, again, you'd have 1 transaction come about from that. So any questions on that? So the decision really you have to make is, do I want to do more prospecting and do I want to do more marketing? And the answer to that question may come from the amount of money you have in your wallet and how much of it you're willing to spend. So prospecting is active, and marketing in general is not as active. It's more receiving or passive, they call it. So that's what your lead generation model talks about. Next thing I want to talk about is a little bit of your budget model, and I'm going to try and speed up here because I know I'm running behind. Three key areas with that. So biggest key takeaways, and these are all in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book: lead with revenue, not with expenses. So if you don't have money, don't go spend it and put money on a credit card to start marketing to people you're not even sure in a program are going to work with you. So make sure that when you close a deal, though, you're setting money aside from that, maybe at that ratio that the 30% of your transactions or 30% of your income from a particular transaction, you put that into a bank account and you use that as your marketing money for your expenses, because you already know that that's the model that from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent that works. Play red light, green light. What that means is that spend a little bit of money on something, and then if it's working, spend more. If it's not working, stop spending the money. So many people don't measure the results they get from programs that they do that they end up wasting a ton of money. And the last thing is stick to your budget. So I know people love talking about budgets, but we're going to skip the rest of that. Organizational model. So now this is actually the group I went to Philmont with. A couple of my sons are in there, but this is when we were on top of the mountain. And so we had to go as a team. Every day we went and did things as a team. We always had one person was in the lead, one person was in the back. We had people assigned to cooking. We had people assigned to cleaning up, people assigned to all kinds of different things, carrying the water, like literally carrying the water. And so similarly, you have an organizational model, whether you know it or not. And so your organizational model, even if you don't have a team per se, is your lender, it's your home inspector, it's your title company, and your transaction management company. And if you are in Market Center mentorship, you're going to have a transaction management company in Leverage Opportunity that will help you to get things. If you're not an MCM, but you're a solo agent, you can still use a transaction management company. And one of the things I would tell you that I would not do, again, as I did when I built my business, is I learned how to do green sheets, which we don't have really anymore, I don't think, right? We have green sheets. I learned how to process my own transactions. I learned how to turn the paperwork in almost perfectly, so that when the file came back, it was a physical file back then. Actually, it was on stone tablets, frankly. We just had cleaned all the chips off, hand them right in. But in any case, I learned how to do all that stuff. And I was really good at it. And you know how much money I made doing that? Like zero. I made zero money doing that. And so I would have been much better off to hire somebody to go do that work for me and then spend my time marketing to others. So thinking about your team is going to be the people that are in business with. All right. So here's the slide. So we talked about business 101. I think I must have get these out of order, but in any case, separate bank account and credit cards, business hours. This is one thing also I want to talk about. Some real estate agents tend to get into business and they work all the time. And one of the things that Keller Williams is great at, I think, is telling you or helping you to understand that the purpose of business is to fund your life. It's not for you to work all the time. And so you need to establish business hours and adhere to them. And then a lot of people's objection to that is, well, my clients want to go see blah, 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 or whatever. And so my response to you would be, your clients will do what you tell them to do. You just have to have the guts to tell them to do it. Leverage. So everybody needs leverage. No one succeeds alone. Again, talking a little bit about the value proposition or about leverage opportunity. And then your value proposition. One of the things you need to be able to do as a business person is to communicate to people why they should work with you. If you can't do that right now, then you need to think about that and figure out how you can create that value proposition. We're still at base camp on this here, but I've been to the top of the mountain already, so I think I must have got some of these out of order. But in any case, we're going with it. System. So as a person trying to working to get to 20 transactions, you have to understand the 80-20 rule. And what that means is that 20% of or 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your actions. The 20% that you have in your and maybe next slide. Oh, it is perfect. It's like a lottery up here. So your 20% as an agent is leads, listings, and leverage. The lead generation versus lead receiving is kind of the passive prospecting or passive marketing versus prospecting. You want to be in the prospecting mode and actively generating those leads yourselves, because when you're sitting back and you're in an economy that may be about to turn, like we might be, if you're just receiving leads, you're going to be really susceptible to the turns in the economy. But if you're out there actively, proactively doing things, you're going to be much better off. Listings, you want to focus on listings as a solo agent. Now, if you're on a team, the listings and the team will actually help you a lot. So even if you don't work with listings on your team, you still want to work on getting those for the team, because that will be where a lot of leads come from, and also a lot of your bragging rights. And then leverage people, systems, and tools. I'm gotta speed up here a little bit because I'm behind. All right, so once you set out on your journey, the one thing you have to understand is that you actually have to go and do something. And this is where we talked a little bit in the beginning, where people a lot of times will do training and preparation, and they'll do scripts practice, and they'll do all this stuff, but they'll never actually get out and go start working. And so the number one thing on your journey is your schedule, and getting your schedule to a point where you get up every day, because you're in business at 7 or 8 or whatever time you get up. I get up at 5:15 every day. So if you want to sell 120, you get up at 5. If you want to sell more than that, you have to get up earlier, evidently. But I think I'm going to get up at 5 again this year. But in any case, your schedule. So, and you have to schedule your lead generation, and then your appointments, and then also managing your energy. So we'll go into some of these things. On your schedule, you want to do things where you're working in your business and not on your business. A lot of people also will work on their business a lot of times and won't necessarily be working in their business. And the difference is essentially that if I'm talking to buyers and sellers, I'm working in my business. And if I'm working on my economic model, or I'm figuring out what the best CRM is for me to use, then I'm working on my business. And you need to focus on whatever brings you the money. Like, you're going to figure out what your 20% is, and then put that on your calendar and make sure you honor it. And if you erase it, you have to replace it. In other words, you need to move that around rather than canceling it. So if your plan is, I'm going to call for sale by owners today from 10 until 11, and a client calls you and says, hey, I've got a house I want to go see quick. Can you take me at 10 o'clock? Your answer needs to be, no, I'm sorry, I have an appointment at that time. Well, how about 11:30? Will that work? And because if you continually erase things and you don't replace them, then you're going to be back in a position where you don't have enough transactions to sustain your business. As part of your schedule, the one thing that I didn't understand when I first started this is how all these things work together. Now, this may be somewhat Greek to some of you guys, but I'm going to kind of try to explain it, because this is something that I think is important. So the way the tools that Keller Williams gives you are supposed to work together are that you have a business plan that you do on an annual basis. The business plan is literally the economic model, the budget model, the organizational model, and the lead generation model we talked about, just put all together in one place, not too sophisticated. The second thing you have is your GPS. So now you know what you need to do. The GPS and the 135 basically tell you how to do it and what things you're going to do. So for instance, my goal is to have 20 transactions this year. And what that means is that each month I have to call 100,000 for sale by owners. So the 100,000 for sale by owners goes on your GPS as part of your thing. Then the next level down, so to speak, is your 12-week plan. And this is something I added because this is much more effective, I feel like, than using an annual tool. The 12-week plan is a book, actually. I don't remember the guy's name, but he's a freaking genius. The 12-week plan is something where you essentially, instead of planning annually, you plan quarterly. And then that 12-week plan works on your 411. You guys familiar with 411s? You guys have taken class? Not okay. So your 411 is essentially breaking down your activities, what you need to do to a daily basis or a weekly basis. And so let's say, again, let's use that example of every year I need to call 100 FSBOs. Let's say that's what it is. So then each quarter I would need to call 25 for sale by owners in the 12-week plan. And then on your 411, you would break that down to the week. So if I'm intending to call 12 or 25 people per quarter, that means I've got to call roughly 8 or 9 per month, which works out to about 4 per week. So that you can put on your calendar. Then, and that's the lowest, not the lowest, but the most important level actually is what makes your calendar. So then, you know, by working this backwards, that when you work it forwards from your calendar, you'll actually hit the 20 transactions. So hopefully that made sense. But you do your business plan, you make that business plan go into an annual activity list of things on the GPS. The GPS filters down to a quarterly list of things you need to get done. And then that quarterly list works down to the weekly things, which actually make it on your daily calendar. So that way, you know, going the other direction, you'll hit your annual goal as long as you're doing the things that are on your calendar. Does that make more sense? Okay, great. we talked a little bit about this already. This one again got out of order, but prospecting and marketing is about finding the people, while marketing is about, or prospecting is about finding people, and marketing is about having them find you. We talked about being in lead receiving mode versus being in lead generation mode. One of the things I've heard continually is that most successful teams and agents have no more than 5 sources of business. So when you guys look at these lists of things, I've even seen a lot of agents only have 3 sources of business. You really need to whittle it down. And one of the ways to get out of business quickest is to try to do everything on this list a little bit. And the best thing to do is to actually do a little, to do 1 or 2 or 3 things on the list really well. The 4 laws of lead generation, we'll go into this real quickly. So build your database, feed it every day, communicate systematically, and service all the leads. Man, the time just went by so fast. And then kind of the journey piece about appointments and negotiation. So a lot of times they say sharpen the saw, but a lot of times you need to cut wood. And so that's what we're doing here, is cutting wood. Just thought bring that out. But anyway, the three focus areas on that are figuring out the numbers you must hit, your appointments you have to go on, and then knowing your conversion rates obviously really plays into that. And in the beginning, you're not going to know what your conversion rates are. So you're just going to have to keep track of it and write down everything you do. So if for sale by owners is what you're going to do, you need to just write down every time you call one and the results of that call. And then you got to keep going through to eventually, where the end of the year, you might be able to figure out a rate of conversion. And then you can use that to work backwards to get to your goal. And one of the other things in the MREA book that I really want to talk about, I think just for a minute here, because I don't have much time, is that as you're building your business from 0 to 20, the most important thing you need to do is to be able to manage your energy. Because if you don't manage your schedule, you don't manage your energy, you're not going to be able to manage your schedule, and not managing your schedule means you're not going to hit your goals. And so Gary is a big proponent of the 4 areas, or 5 areas, I guess, that you need to do everything that I'm going to talk about here before 11 a.m. So I told you my schedule is I get up at 5:15 every day. And when I get up at 5:15, I immediately go to exercise. And you don't have to do it in these orders, but I exercise from about 5:30 until about 6:30 now, because I've increased the amount because I've been eating too much evidently. And the scale told me I need to work out longer. So you work out in the morning, and then after I work out, I try to take some time and I read, or I either read scripture or pray, or sometimes I'll read things that are more like business books or something like that. So do something to get that energy going. Obviously see your family in the morning, have breakfast with them, and then figure out what it is, planning and calendaring, that you're going to do that day before you do it. And then the last thing is just lead generating every day. So going back to Emily's point, lead generate every day. That's the number one thing. If you can do that, then you're in good shape. 5 simple steps to getting to 20 deals. Just create your plan and then make the process of getting there your focus. And what that means is that looking every day you're practicing and getting towards it. So even if you're not doing as much as you hope, you're still doing it every day. Time block those things and keep that focus during your time blocks. Get accountability in the form of a coach, and then make sure your environment supports your focus. So if you're trying to lead generate on the couch in front of the TV, you're probably not going to have much success. So come into the office, sit in the empty conference room if you have to, or wherever, find a place and lead generate here. And then keep your energy up throughout the day. Make sure you're eating healthy foods and you're sleeping enough and not drinking too much alcohol or eating too many bad things for you. So last thing, which is clearly I have to knock some of this out of here. When you reach your goal, one of the interesting things happens is that you actually can look out from the top of that mountain. You can see that by far you're not on the tallest mountain. And so this happened to us actually when we got to the top of Baldy, which is actually bald, which is why they call it that. But if you can look off there, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but off in the distance is the Colorado mountains, and it looks kind of like the beer can actually when they turn blue. That's what that's from. But anyway, they're always going to be a place that's a higher mountain. So trying to honor time, I only gave Kate 5 minutes to talk about her stuff. So I'm going to let Kate come up here and discuss leverage opportunity real quick. And I don't know if you want to stand in front of that camera or in front of this camera, but you're welcome to do whichever.
I'll just be where you are. I always,
Let me get to
anytime
this.
anybody speaks, oh gosh, I am here. Anytime anybody speaks, I always like to give takeaways too. I learned that from Dana. And so if anybody has anything that they want to say that they were big ahas were, feel free to shout them out now. I'll go if you don't have any, because I did take a couple. Anybody have any big takeaways from today? You can give some feedback to Ryan.
Well, I think the takeaway that I got is you need to be disciplined and you need to get a lot of stuff done before 11 a.m. And I'm not doing that. So I can definitely improve my business by doing that.
I loved that 11 a.m. too. I thought, gosh, people say that, you know what I mean? Start your day off right, but he put a time on it. Like, no, I have a deadline. And if I don't have it by 11, then it's not getting done. We know that. I think that was great, Emily. Yeah. Anybody else have anything? Okay. My big one, I think, was probably two, who you have in your court, I think was a really big one for me. And I think we always focus on these systems and models, but when you forget that it's really who you're surrounding yourself with, I think the one thing I would add is who your personal relationships are also. People that are encouraging you. Is your spouse on board? Do they understand your goals? Can they say when you have really bad days, hey, you know what? We're still on track. You're still doing it. You just got to keep moving, and surrounding yourself with that emotional support, I think, was a big one. So I would say who's, and then I think I heard, and Ryan actually shared this class with me once, but Jason Abrams once said in one of his courses that there's so many different ways you can spread yourself thin when it comes to marketing, and that it's most beneficial when you pick 3 and 3 to 5, like Ryan said. And so that was a reiteration, I think, or a reminder for me that, like, we have to focus in on what our skill set is. If you're not the open house type, then open house should not be on your on your list. You know what I mean? Know who you are and what your skill sets are. And that's one thing that I've learned from Ryan in the past too, is figure out what you're really good at and then be consistent about it, because it makes no sense to have a neighborhood that you're farming once a year, because you're just throwing away your money. So let's be consistent with whatever we're doing, whether it's social media or postcards or door knocking. It would be embarrassing to show up, once every 3 years and be like, yeah, I'm your neighborhood realtor, knocking on the door. And they're like, I've never seen you before. So being consistent about what you're doing, but narrowing it down so that you do it really, really well. Okay, so what I wanted to mention today, really quick, Ryan had talked about leverage. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody that's on here knows what Dana has provided to your brokerage, whether you're in Kentucky or you're in Indiana or whether you're in Columbus. This is something that's available to you. It's a leverage program where we focus on making sure that those day-to-day tasks that Ryan had said weren't making him any money, that those are off of your plate and that there's no overhead when they are off of your plate. So when you're in that middle ground of, okay, I'm not making enough money that I can support someone in a salary, or maybe you are, but it's not consistent. So in December, you're like, how do I pay them, right now? That we have something to support you in that middle ground. And so what we do is we take those things off of your plate and ensure that you have the time back to do whatever you want with it. We encourage you to grow your business if that's something that's important to you. But if you're really, really happy in where you are and you're feeling content and you just want to make it home by 5 p.m. and not be doing paperwork, then that's something that you use for us too. So really our whole goal is to empower you, to make sure that you have time back and that you can use it wisely. Ryan, okay, there we go. So really quick, our service breakdown, the 3 things that we focus on mainly are compliance. And so for our MCM people, if there are any of you on here, that's really what you're getting right now, is a really hardcore audit of all of your documents, ensuring that you have everything that compliance needs to make sure that you get paid on time. Ensuring that everything's filled out right. So if you're in Columbus, that residential property disclosure, or everybody actually has a type of residential property disclosure, making sure that that's filled out appropriately, that we didn't miss anything. That's how thorough we are, not just making sure everything's signed. Go through with that audit, upload everything, create opportunities in command for you, like you have to move them through, making sure that your commission is done appropriately, that you're getting paid the correct amount. And then we're following up weekly to ensure that if there are any price change addendums, anything that the MCA needs to know that affect that compliance portion of your transaction, that those are processed appropriately. So that's our compliance piece. We do that for listing and for buys. And then we also, that commissions that I mentioned, and then listing and contract to close. This is the big one that we find is of greatest value to our agents at all 3 brokerages in KW1 team. And that's that we're actually taking the lead on a lot of the communication pieces off of your plate with lenders and title companies, making sure that things are scheduled, uploading listings into the MLS, photography, all of that stuff is taken off of your plate so that you can focus on lead generation and things that are actually making you money, the things that are in your 20%, like Ryan had mentioned. And so that's pretty much taking control over all lender and loan communication, all title, ensuring that every deadline within the contract and the offer that you've accepted or has been accepted for you is moving smoothly. And then we're also giving that extra layer of customer service to you without sounding like this outside party. Nobody, Michelle is in the room, nobody would know that if I was managing a transaction for her that we're not elbow to elbow in the same office. We would look as if and act as if we were on the same team. And so there's no leverage opportunity or some kind of transaction management company. It's, hi, Michelle asked me to reach out to you and give you the title commitment, or Michelle wanted me to check in on this loan. And so that's what we're doing within the brokerage, and that's something that's offered to you guys. Let's see. Okay, we're also offering several different services. Now, first and foremost, I would make sure that as you're growing and building your plan, like Ryan had mentioned, that you know exactly what is available to you at KW1 Team. Our social media and marketing concierge program is outstanding, and they do great work. And so if you're looking to leverage that off, I highly recommend you reaching out. If you're looking for kind of one-off items, we also have a marketing department at Leverage Opportunity that we're able to help you with too. And so we handle social media, customized approach to that. Thank you, Yasim. We also have marketing design, and we do postcards. I just did one the other day. Any kind of one-off social media posts. We do video editing, logo design work, campaigns, marketing ads that I put up there. We do a lot of posters. I've done t-shirts, any kind of materials, sign design that you're looking to build, we're able to leverage that off your plate too. So again, that's all in-house for you. And then finally, just if you take anything or are curious about what we're doing, because I honestly think if you're thinking, okay, this is not for me, this isn't my cup of tea, then that's absolutely fine. But I highly recommend you know what's available at your brokerage so that you can continue profit sharing. If you have friends that are in real estate and they are looking for a brokerage, then sitting down at a coffee table and knowing what this brokerage is offering is going to benefit you in the long run. So multiple plans for every agent. Doesn't matter if you're solo, if you're on a team, if you're growing a team. We have worked with everybody and continue to work with everybody. So it really doesn't matter who you are, where you're at in real estate. There's no overhead. And so it's not like hiring somebody where you are in a contract for a month, use us for one transaction, drop us for the next. If you only want us working on buys, then that's fine too. If you only want to do MLS data entry, that's okay too, or matrix data entry. So there's no contracts like I had mentioned, and it's easy access to us. So like I'm in all 3 states traveling a lot, but all of our people are local. We're KW people. And so this is a system in a culture that we understand. We understand the language, and we highly understand what you're after and the kind of life that you're trying to live. And so we do one-on-one consultations to figure out exactly what you're looking for. And then we set that up for you. So whether or not you plan to use us in the future, or at least know that we are, when you're in that gap of, gosh, I feel like I'm successful and things are going really well, but I can't breathe anymore, that's a time to call, or call us now and get those systems in order, because we have the systems, and it's not like that's something that can't be replicated, if that makes sense. So we do that. KW Ready. If you're looking for more information, please reach out. My information is there. But also, if you want to know more or want materials for if you're building your profit share, then reach out, and I'm happy to send you that kind of stuff too. Anybody have any questions on what we're offering, or anything else that KW is offering too? I'd be happy to answer some questions for you. All right, good deal. Well, Ryan is still here, so he can wave goodbye. They can see it kind of. Thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, reach out, and I'll make sure that everybody has my business card. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one.